The start of Phase 5. It's the biggest event.
Kang the Conqueror is the new iconic villain in the MCU.
When I tell you this movie is Kang's homecoming party, it is Kang's homecoming party.
Jonathan just has it all. I mean, he is like the actor of his generation. He's really exciting.
Right, Jonathan Majors is fantastic in it. Like, all the buzz you hear about Jonathan Majors playing Kang totally lives up to the hype.
From the very beginning, all the way back in Loki Season 1, Kang the Conqueror's introduction had left a sour taste in audiences' mouths. Going forward, out of the limitless possibilities Marvel could have gone, they really screwed up every single step of the way. And it all failed with the introduction. And yeah, Kang the Conqueror's reign of terror had been short-lived, not just because the actor was fired, but because he was never really that terrifying. This next big bad of the MCU, who was claimed to be on par with Thanos by Marvel themselves, ultimately proved to be the most underwhelming big bad ever.
Let's go! I'm sick of her ass!
Let's look at when we meet Thanos, the first big bad.
A Warcraft, I repeat, this is not a Warcraft.
The scene is set as soon as the usual Marvel logo begins, with eerie Asgardian messages, ominous music, and characters we come to love in a desperately dire situation.
Smile, for even in death, you have become children of Thanos.
Without even seeing Thanos, we're terrified by the setting.
I know what it's like to lose. Feel so desperately that you're right, yet to fail nonetheless.
And when we finally see Thanos, he's front and center in the spotlight, elevated above the other characters with the mighty Thor at his mercy. This is how you introduce a big bad. This is visual storytelling at its peak. If you remove the dialogue, the scene has the same impact through its visuals alone. The dialogue only emphasizes Thanos and works in tandem, rather than carrying the character. Now let's look at Quantumania. The Marvel fanfare plays immediately, setting us up for a fun, hopeful movie. But then the movie shifts its tone by playing eerie music, giving a subtle whiplash to the audience. There's a lack of suspense here as well. Since the scene is a flashback and we know Janet Van Dyne escapes the quantum realm, why should the audience care about what's going on here? It's clearly shoehorned to fix future plot holes, so already not a great start.
What is this place?
Our introduction to the next big bad is weak and meager. He's on the ground, half alive, looking goofy. How are we supposed to be terrified by this?
Oh, shiver my timbers! Shut up, man!
While Thanos is grand and strong, Kang is sad and pathetic. So visually, Kang is not great off the bat. But let's look at their actions, because that speaks louder than anything else. Thanos wastes no time proving his worth, almost killing Thor, beating the crap out of the Hulk, and murdering Loki within 5 minutes of Infinity War. You don't hear other characters telling you how scary Thanos is. You see how scary Thanos is. When Bruce Banner warns the other Avengers about the impending wrath of Thanos,
Thor's gone. Thanos is coming. It doesn't matter who you're talking to or not.
you believe his terror and it comes off as genuine. You don't know who will live and who will survive whenever he's around, and that's pure brilliance. But with Kang, you have none of that. Instead, you hear for half of the runtime of this ominous figure who is so dangerous and imposes a huge threat on their existence.
He is hunting you. He will burn the world to find you.
You left all of us with him. You didn't tell them about him.
And there's no place you can run.
Not from him. He's the future. He's the past. And now all he needs is you.
Can you shut the f up?
Their cries of dangers are not believable to the audience because you don't see Kang do anything they speak of. He doesn't kill any of the main characters, nor does he prove his worth. He's the man of talk, not action. He says he'll kill Cassie Lang and force Scott to watch forever.
I am a man who likes to be understood.
But if he were truly menacing, he'd do it anyway, and rewind time so that Ant-Man knows he's serious. So we know that he is serious. But he says he's killed Avengers and destroyed countless timelines.
You're an Avenger. Have I killed you before?
So what? We never saw him do it, so how should we believe him? We have no emotional attachment to the unnamed timelines or generic soldiers, so who really cares? And his presentation is meek as well. His slowly paced dialogue doesn't leave you interested, only bored. He speaks for the fun of it, as if he just wants to hear himself speak.
You're an interesting man. Scott Lang.
Kang is just full of ego, whereas Thanos speaks with purpose, no word without meaning. His dialogue is carefully crafted to match his actions.
With all 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers. They would all cease to exist. I call that mercy.
He defeats the Avengers in Infinity War multiple times throughout the films, sometimes with none or one of the Infinity Stones. But Kang, this alleged Avengers level threat, is humorously mauled by futuristic ants and ultimately loses to Ant-Man. No disrespect to Scott Lang, but Kang, who is supposed to be on par with Thanos, loses to Ant-Man. How are we supposed to take this big bad seriously when this happens? Let me reiterate one more time. With a full army at his disposal, advanced technology, and powers, Kang loses to Ant-Man.
I ruined the moment, didn't I?
Kang lovers will say that the true threat of Kang are the countless variants to come, an infinite amount who are stronger and smarter. That's what makes him menacing. Sure, I guess that's a good point, but there's several problems with that notion. Quantumania as a movie suffers at the expense of setting up future films. Kang the Conqueror as a character suffers at the expense of losing to Ant-Man. Personally, I never liked the common Kang hater idea of infinity characters are unfathomable to our brain, so how can we be scared of that threat? So instead of retreating to that idea, I'll raise a better point. If there's an infinite amount of Kangs who are stronger and smarter, there's also an infinite amount of heroes who could easily defeat all these variants, especially if it only took futuristic ants to defeat a single one. And I'll go further. In Loki, we meet a couple more variants of Kang. It's sort of like the preamble to the character, similar to Thanos' mini introduction in Guardians of the Galaxy or the post-credit scenes. However, each variant is arguably just as terrible, if not worse, than the variant we meet in Quantumania. Just because it's a short introduction doesn't mean they don't have the potential to make him scary. He Who Remains was never really terrifying to me, only a silly goofball trying to be scary, and Victor Timely was just awful.
But perhaps we can shape it.
Again, how am I supposed to be scared over this big bad if not one variant has proved their worth? And I never got the hype over Jonathan Majors' acting. Each time he was angry or upset, he looked like a toddler who didn't want to eat their vegetables, and reminded me of Harry Styles' acting.
How many Avengers I've killed, and you think you can beat me? I am Kang! You.
Well, Jonathan just has it all. I mean, he is like the actor of his generation.
So it feels like an insult to the hardworking writers and creative team behind Infinity War when I see Marvel compare Kang the Conqueror to Thanos. Kang was nothing but an egotistical man suffering from insecurity, but Thanos was a man driven by ambition, who put his money where his mouth is and faces his problems head on. There was a lot of potential for this character. Kang really did have the power to be an ominous big bad, but that would have required a lot of thought, effort, intellect, and ironically, time be put into developing this character, all of which were neglected, so a rushed character can fill the demand of a money-hungry studio. All of these problems could have been solved by a proper introduction, perhaps one that demonstrated Kang's power to destroy timelines, killing Avenger variants, or perhaps maybe the ones we've known. But like Thanos once said, reality is often disappointing. And with the firing of Jonathan Majors, Thanos' statement hits a little too close to home. Maybe they'll recast, or maybe they'll start with a new big bad. Either way, there's an opportunity for Marvel to atone for their mistakes, and to properly introduce a worthy villain.